All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to day number 2 of StraboSpot. We're going to spend a lot of the day, well, it's going to be shorter presentation time than yesterday, and we'll spend a lot of the time talking about offline maps, using offline maps, backing up data, etc. Before we get started, just a couple of announcements. Randy, you have an announcement?
Yeah, this is Randy Williams. I'm going to be coordinating the sort of demo projects. If anybody was interested in doing a demo project as Basil described yesterday and potentially getting funding for that. If you have questions about that or need some input about maybe how to tackle something, or even if you just have intentions of doing that and you want to let me know about it, I'm putting my email in the chat box right now. So feel free to contact me if you're interested in doing a demo project this week.
All right, well, thanks, Randy. Yeah, we're hoping to get quite a few demos during this week. And you got, like we talked about yesterday, you have a lot of different ways of getting them in besides just using StraboSpot, the app, directly. You could come in from shapefiles or StereoNet data. And if you look at the question and answers that we've had a few different questions and answers. One of them was about getting KMZ data and possibly waypoint data in. There's an answer to that if you have data in that format. We'll hear a little bit about KMZs later from Jason Ash, and we'll go from there. So the main people presenting today are going to be myself, Nick Roberts, who sorry, who is going to work a little bit with us today on this, and then is going to do a lot on Friday with talking about the Strabo 2 interface. And then we're also going to have Jason Ash on. Jason is the lead developer for the Strabo project, and one of 4 developers we have working at various capacities on it. And again, just go ahead and any questions or anything, just go ahead and type into the chat. Somebody will answer them as quickly as possible. For tomorrow, we're going to be having a bit on Strabo tools, and I know that you all got in the announcement, Strabo Tools is also on the App Store. Alan Glazner will be presenting that. So you probably want to, I would recommend getting it downloaded. Like StraboSpot, it's free. It was all paid for by NSF, so it's all free and you guys can get it. Do any of the other organizers want to say anything? Basil, do you want to say anything today before we get started?
I don't think so. Everything, if there's problems, just go ahead and email Randy or myself, and otherwise, no, everything's going fine.
And if there are big problems, email Basil and not me. So, right, Basil?
Thanks, Doug.
Yep. Does anybody else have anything they want to add before we get started today? All righty. Well, I'm going to go back to sharing my iPad screen here, and hopefully everybody will be able to see it okay and nothing will lock up. And should come up here in just a second. So you all should be seeing a screen that looks like something you saw yesterday out in the Mojave Desert. And we had a few questions about working offline and what it takes to do that. Wanted to talk about that, and also offline maps and maps in general. So right now you're seeing the StraboSpot screen. I'm projecting this from an iPad mini. And you can see the green dot up here. The green dot means that you are online, you're connected to the internet. And right now I'm showing this map, which is Mapbox topo layer, as you can see down here at the bottom. And you can see that I'm at a zoom factor of 10, and you can see the 10-kilometer scale. We follow pretty much standard conventions on tiling. The way that maps are brought into StraboSpot is the way they're brought into all mobile apps, basically, which is a tiling scheme. That is all worked out. It's very standardized. And so what we get is served images from Mapbox that we display here. If I were going to go out into the field, though, and I wanted to be mapping in a particular area, then really what I want to be able to do is not have the green dot there. I want to be able to work offline. So if you go up to the three-dot menu in the upper right, you get this dialog that says Save Map for Offline Use. Click that, and then you get a dialog about various zoom levels. And basically, it displays the zoom level you're at is 15. It also downloads every tile above you. So basically, you get a lot of wider scale viewed tiles downloaded with this. Most of them don't do you any good in any detail work in the area you're going to be, but at least you have them for reference. And again, the factor is a factor of 4 with every scale that you go up. So 31 tiles if I go to level 15. If I click 16, factor 2, I guess, or a little bit. Well, it has the original ones plus additional ones. And then if I go to zoom level 19, which is the highest zoom level that is supported by Mapbox, I'll get 3,800 tiles, 3,700 tiles. Let me just go to zoom level 16 and I say download the tiles. Basically what it does is it goes through, puts them together and installs them into StraboSpot. So that was for 79, 70 some tiles. As you get into the thousands, it takes a little while longer. If you want to download lots and lots of tiles, you'll want to make sure you're on a good, fast internet connection. So I'm going to go back now, and here's the map where we were. If I go to the 3-line menu, and then I go down towards the bottom, I have maps, the main map, which was what we're seeing. We saw image-based maps yesterday. And now I can list offline maps. So for example, I have 79 tiles of Mapbox topo. If I then go back to my main map, I'm going to scoot to a slightly different area here and let it, different color. It's all covered by sand. I go into this area now and do the 3-dot for save offline map. I've zoomed out a little bit. I'll go up to level 16 here. So I went to 16, 223 tiles, do the download, and it actually gets everything downloaded and ready. It's downloaded them all already. And it basically is smart enough to know if you've already downloaded tiles, not to download again. So now I have a bunch of different tiles saved for this map. I can do that with any of the online base maps. And an online base map is any base map that's available connected to the internet. I have some other examples here. I'm going to show you the Dun 77 one in just a little bit. But anyway, so I have that downloaded. I could change over to Mapbox Satellite, do exactly the same operation, save map for offline use, go up to level 15. I'm just going to do a few levels here, bring this information in and store the map. So now I've done this a couple times, go back to offline base maps, and now I have both Mapbox Satellite and Mapbox Topo. If I wanted to, I could zoom to the area or zoom into either one of these by hitting the map by the name. So again, offline base maps, I can hit this map. I can also delete the map off if I wanted to as well. So now let me go offline. I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off. And I will go back into Strabo. And now if I go to the main map, you can see the circle in the upper right here is red and means I'm no longer offline, but since I had downloaded the Mapbox satellite, we see a nice image here. But if I zoom in, you can see that it becomes pretty pixelated. So essentially what you're seeing here is the size of the tiles and the size of the pixels in the tiles. Let's leave this up. I'm going to jump back and go back online again. Okay. And if we jump back into StraboSpot, now you can see that that same area that was very pixelated, I have a lot of detail for. So that's, and the green dot has reappeared. So that's basically saving maps for offline use. And any map that you can get online, you can save for offline use. So that's kind of the first thing with offline working that I wanted to show. Does anybody have any quick questions about that? All right, so let me go to other base maps. Now, one thing that I find that happens a lot when I'm working is that I'll be out in the field, for example, in this area that I'm working on here, where I do have some data collected, part of a longer going project for this area. And I find a paper like this. And let me go ahead and share this screen. Which is a paper by George Dunn on the Devil's Playground area in GSA Bulletin in '77. And George has a map in here in 2 pieces. And I look at this and I go, you know, that would be really, really nice to be able to have that map in my project. And so what I did, this is true story. I was in the field. I remembered this map. I basically went into Acrobat, did 2 snapshots of the map, put them together in Photoshop so that they were a nice map. Then I uploaded them into something that that's called Mapwarper. And Mapwarper is an online service. It's a free service offered by a guy named Tim Waters, who's at the New York City Library System. And what he allows you to do is upload maps of any sort and then rectify them. So what I ended up doing is taking this map that I had put together in Photoshop, I uploaded it, and then I put 4 control points on it. Those 4 control points are shown on the right-hand side of the screen. They were just things I could match, road intersections, etc. And the way Mapwarper works is that it will allow you to have OpenStreetMap or Mapbox satellite. And you can also show the warp map where it is. So I can turn the warp map off or make sure that it's warped and fitting well. This sort of functionality is available online here with Mapwarper. It's pretty easy to use. The same functionality, of course, is available in any GIS program. So if you went in and you were in the field, you found the paper you liked that was a PDF, you could bring it in into QGIS or ArcGIS if you wanted and do the same thing. I like Mapwarper. I like supporting it. Mapwarper right now is full up. He has tens of thousands of maps in here and is clearing out some space. So if you tried to use Mapwarper today, you wouldn't be able to. What I'm showing today, you can also, if you get your map rectified, you can bring it into Mapbox and use their tools as well. The most complicated map I've done this with was, and this was a lot of fun to do actually, was a thesis map by Ed DeWitt out in this particular area. I got it from Penn State, and there were, in total, his thesis map and his dissertation were done in 96 different tiles, which all I did was take the TIFFs, stuff them into Photoshop, use Photoshop to do the photo merge on them, and then they went straight into, let me go to my home again, and go in, oops, sorry, I'm covering part of my screen here. Go into my favorites. And then these 96 maps, I then brought into the Mapwarper system, found about 35 control points that I was able to use to warp this, and then brought it in. We'll get to in just a couple of minutes hearing about StraboSpot My Maps. One thing you can do from here, and you can do in any GIS program, is you could export to GeoTIFFs, PNGs, other formats. We recommend getting a GeoTIFF, and then you can take that into directly into StraboSpot My Maps. Anyway, so what I ended up doing was I had this map by George Dunn that I, hopefully everybody's seeing Mapwarper now. I had this map by George Dunn, which what I did was I get a number for it. You can see up here at the top, it's 36770. This is the map Warper number for this. And then all I had to do in StraboSpot at this point was, hopefully you're seeing my iPad. Is everybody seeing the iPad now?
Yeah, Doug.
How about now?
Now we are.
Okay. So what I went in to do here is I went into this option called Other Base Maps. And you can see Dunn 1977 is in there with the ID. If I want to add a map, I click on the plus at the upper right here, and then I can select from 3 different map type. Well, Mapbox Classic has been deprecated at this point, but you can still bring it in. But Mapbox Styles, Mapwarper, and Strabo My Maps. For this particular map, I just hit Mapwarper. I enter a title and the Mapwarper ID. One of the things that you can do with these maps too is you can set them as an overlay. And as an overlay, you can make them semi-transparent to go over your map. I'll just show you that now. I'm setting this as an overlay with an opacity set to say 0.4. I click the check mark. Oops. I'm going to quit out of this. I'm going to go into Done 77, sorry, set it as an overlay, and then the opacity is 0.4, click check mark. Then if I go back to my main map now, I can do the Done 77 as an overlay. I can see it now on top of my Mapbox satellite image, but then I can see the geologic detail, and I can go back and forth and adjust this as needed. So these are the sorts of things that you can do here. Again, I could take this out of the overlay. I could, for example, this is a geologic map from GSA that we have, a different map. And again, once I have this displayed, I get exactly the same option of saving the map for offline use with different zoom levels. So that's really what we end up with here for the offline use part and the offline maps. I'll come back in a little bit and just show a little bit about backing up data. But Nick, can you go in and do a little bit now on looking at Strabo My Maps?
Yep, absolutely. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you can share your screen.
Awesome. So I am Nick Roberts. I'm a postdoc at University of Wisconsin. And hopefully you can see my screen at this point.
Yep.
So Doug went over some external tools to he went over Mapwarper, which is an external tool to get and georeference map. We've built a tool that's within StraboSpot. If you have GeoTIFFS, which is one of the common ways to download things from the USGS is in a GeoTIFF format. So that's a raster image that has already has georeferenced data. And so I'm just going to show you quickly how that works. So I'm logged into my StraboSpot account, and I'm going to share my desktop instead of sharing just that one application. So if I go, I have a folder here, and I've downloaded a hillshade it's a place in Southern California. And this is just one of the common products that you might be able to download. It's a GeoTIFF, and I want to get that into my StraboSpot account and then download it onto my iPad. So over here under account, I go to My Maps. And when I do that, I have a few, and I've already added this hillshade map.tiff because it takes a little while to upload. There's a 500 megabyte size limitation for GeoTIFFs that you upload to StraboSpot. And what I can do once I upload that, so if I were to upload it, I could say add new map, select GeoTIFF file, and navigate to that file and just hit upload. So very straightforward. I'll go back, and I can make this public if I want so that other people can access it. And I'm just going to copy this map code to my clipboard. And then I'm going to go over to my iPad. So hopefully you can see my iPad.
Yep.
And down here on the left-hand side, if I go to other base maps, now it's just like the Mapwarper example. I can hit plus, select a map type, so StraboSpot My Maps, and I can name my map, so hillshade, and I can paste that ID in. It'll take a little second. Hit the checkbox. And now if I go to main map, of course I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, so I need to zoom out, go to the appropriate place. When I open up the different layers, my hillshade map is one of the options. And I'm just gonna. So there it is. And just as Doug already went over this, but you can set this map as an overlay over a satellite image, and it's all georeferenced. So if I were to go to this field area, I would be able to reference my spots on top of it. Yep, so that is what I have for my maps. So my maps, I use this all the time. There's so many types of documents from publications that it's kind of the most straightforward way to get a GeoTIFF onto your iPad.
And again, remember, if you want to save it for offline use, you would again have to be connected, add it, and then download it. And just foreshadow, Jason, you're out there, aren't you?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, just foreshadow what Jason's going to talk about here. So here I'm at Strabo My Maps, and this is a field. Is everybody seeing something that says drone of Temple Canyon?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, so this is my map for a drone image that I put up that we have for one of our field camp areas in Colorado. And I'm going to zoom in pretty far. I could keep zooming in. I don't know how big a pixel, how small pixel size I loaded, but this was a drone image that came straight off of, came from somebody else who had flown this area. So I'm going to stop sharing and let Jason take over now. Jason's one of our head developers, and he'll talk a little bit about drone workflow, and then what do you do if you're really, really offline? Take it away, Jason.
Okay, so as Doug said, so if you're out in the field working and you have a drone and you don't have any internet connectivity, we decided we needed to come up with a way for people to get those maps onto their devices, as well as backup data from their devices. So what we've created is StraboSpot Offline. And what StraboSpot Offline is a Docker container that is essentially a copy of our own backend, which you can install on a laptop and take with you out in the field. And so a workflow would be, let's suppose you have a drone and you fly it and you stitch together a bunch of images and you come up with a big mosaic image. You could georeference that in your software of choice. And then you could load it. Here, I'll click on this. I'll just log in. So this is StraboSpot Offline. You could load it under your account under My Maps, just like Nick just showed. So what he showed was at StraboSpot.org. This would actually be on your laptop out in the field. So you wouldn't need any internet connectivity at all. So you could load a map just like Nick did and push it to your device and have that map immediately out in the field. The other advantage to using StraboSpot Offline is any data you collect with your devices, you can push to this server rather than the StraboSpot.org server. So for example, if you're having a field camp out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have internet connectivity, all of your students could collect data and push it to a laptop out in the field, and that way there would be a backup of that data. So that's kind of where we're at with StraboSpot Offline. Again, this is just a Docker container and it'll run on any laptop or PC. I've actually run it on a Raspberry Pi. It's kind of slow, but it'll work on that too. But we've had good luck with running it on a laptop out in the field. So,
thanks, Jason. And I'll say until this year, our field camp, the KU field camp, did not have internet. It was out in the middle of nowhere, and we were running the StraboSpot Offline, I guess for the last 4 or 5 years. Work fine. There's some other tools to this. And then if you go into just the regular StraboSpot menu, then you're able to download a help system for StraboSpot Offline that explains how to set it up and how to use the server, how to use Docker, etc. If you're familiar with Docker, it's all very easy. Anything else you want to add to this at all, Jason or Nick or anybody else?
no, I think I covered what I wanted to say.
Okay. Well, let me jump back in here. You want to go ahead and stop sharing, and I will start sharing here in just a second. Okay, start share. Okay, and are you all seeing my iPad now, I hope? Yay or nay?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
All right. So here's this project I've been working on for a while. Again, it has DP0 out here. My very first spot. Quite fond of DP0. But anyway, so I've got connectivity here. How would I back up this project and how would I make sure my data is safe? Well, I told you all yesterday and showed you the page in the help manual. Since I'm connected, what I would do is I'd go to the manage on the 3-line menu, And then I have the option of uploading my project. What that'll do is upload the project to the server, the StraboSpot server, and then it's up in the air. It's backed up, etc. But what if I'm offline completely? And what if I'm offline and don't have any hope of being online for a few days and I'm getting a little nervous? What I can do is I can use this export project to device button. I click that, and all it does is it just says, okay, I'll make a backup for you. And it gives it a date and time and name, that's it. I hit save, and now the data are written. What it's done is it's backed up the entire project to the device. It's saved as in a separate folder. All the images have already been saved in your photos folder. And basically it's grouped all of this stuff together. You could actually take this backup that I just wrote, and you could copy it using iTunes and stick it, or if you're using Android, just copy it and you can stick it on another device and just use it if you want it. So it's all very easy to go with. So I could export it one more time. It's changed the time to 1:32. And now what I could do is I could import this back in. Suppose I made a mistake when I was in the field. I get a listing now of the projects that are saved as a file, and I can bring those back in. So I can always save this to my device. Unless I destroy my device, I'll have this backup, and I have a way to move the project off and save it for other people or save it for myself, in fact. And then you're going to be asking yourself, okay, well, I did that nasty upload project, but I didn't mean to. What can I do now? I uploaded a project onto the server. Did I just blow away all my data on the server? And the answer, of course, is no. Let's go back to StraboSpot, and I'll go back to my account. And if you look here, I have my data, but you also see at the bottom a versioning. So let me click on versioning. And what you see here is that every project I have has multiple versions associated with it. And what these are backup versions. And now I'm getting down to an old field camp file. What do I have here? I have a whole lot of different versions on here. These were all preserved at different dates. And this is going back to that project I've been working on for years. If I decide that I really want to look and see what it looked like in April of 2019, I could actually restore that snapshot of the database back. So pretty much we're hoping that you can't lose anything with Strabo. As long as you upload it to the server, you should have a version. If you download it onto your iPad, you should have a safe version. The only thing that really can go wrong is you could lose your iPad in the field, and then you're kind of stuck. But if you lose a map in a notebook, you're kind of stuck as well. So anyway, that's the backup, and that's all the different options we have for backup, trying to keep everything as safe as possible. So I'm going to stop sharing now and open it up for anybody with any questions, or anybody else on the Strabo group that wants to correct all the mistakes I made. Basil, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think we should just open it for questions. The chat is being quite active, which is great, but I think this is a case where you could unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask Doug a question directly.
Or Jason, or Nick, or any of us.
Yeah, this is Jochen. I've got a question. Talked about downloading our tiles, but somehow I missed it, how to actually georeference that map that I just downloaded.
So if you're, the way StraboSpot works is that you have to have the map georeferenced somewhere to download it. So in My Maps, StraboSpot My Maps, you've got a GeoTIFF which is referenced. You would reference it in Mapwarper or a GIS program. Or if you get your data externally from like the USGS and get a GeoTIFF, all the georeferencing information is there. And last but not least, if you're downloading from the CAN servers like Mapbox, those are downloaded as georeferenced images. The tiles that come down have a tiling scheme, the numbers of which basically georeference the image. It's kind of like the old quads that you would download from USGS that a DOQ would have many tiles associated with it. And those names actually were a tiling scheme that the USGS used.
So basically, when I download my, apart from that Mapbox map that I want, it's already georeferenced.
It's already georeferenced, yes.
Perfect, perfect, great, thank you.
Hi, Doug. My name's Noah. I just had a question about uploading maps from GIS or ArcGIS specifically. Does that work? Can you do that?
Yeah. Usually what we do with maps from ARC is, again, spit them out as a GeoTIFF and then just bring them in. We, if you're savvy enough to put together a ARC server, we haven't really enabled that, but I suppose we could down the line. Jason, have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, we looked into that once before, but we haven't really made any progress on that. So
I think it's called the SDK version, or the SDK link would allow us to get to that tile service.
yeah, I can't recall off the top of my head.
So basically now the workflow is to georeference your map and spit it out in your GIS package and bring it into Strabo My Maps.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be able to do that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Diana just brought up a really good question about how to access device backups. And I think someone touched on this on Monday maybe, but so if you're on an iPad or an iPhone and you back up to device, it is not stored in the iPhone's file system. It's stored inside of the application file structure. So to access it, plug in your device to your computer. And if you're on a Mac using an older operating system or a Windows computer, then you can access that file system through iTunes. And looks like Doug's maybe bringing that up. And newer Mac operating systems use the file system, the Finder system, but it looks exactly like this when you open the iPad in the Finder system. Doug, do you want to say more about how to drag those out? Or
so, for example, if you prepare a project, and I'll do this with Field Camp, I'll make a project that has all of the images, everything preloaded. It'll be saved as this thing called StraboSpot projects. I will just save that to my computer somewhere. And then what I can do is you can then, in reverse, put your iPad on, do add, and then you can go through your computer and find those same files. I think I can find one here. Sorry about this. No, I don't have one here handy, but anyway, the point is you can go in and upload them as well. So this is what the backup is. So if you're worried and you're in the field, you can just select the projects and save it to your device. Again, if you're using the Android version, this is a lot easier because you can just do it from the Android file system. Anything else that came in on the chat that would be good to address for the whole group?
And maybe also, Doug, we take questions about the projects generally, like any issues people are having putting projects together at this point.
Okay, or take any question whatsoever.
Doug, this is Mike Wells.
Hey, Mike.
A question, having just recently become minimally competent in field move, with that system, once you look at detailed satellite images, when you're online, I believe the images are sort of sitting in the cache because when you're offline, they're available. So with StraboSpot, you have to deliberately download the high resolution images so that you can then upload them when you're offline. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. For Strabo 1, that's the path you have to use. In Strabo 2, there's a certain amount of caching that is done, but I wouldn't trust that caching. I would go ahead and just download the images, and then you know you have them.
To actually add to Mike Wells's comment, I noticed when I was using Field Move that it was supposed to cache things when you zoomed in, but when I was offline, they'd usually be pixelated. So I kind of like this functionality in Strabo that you know that those tiles are actually cached, and you can look and see which ones are cached.
If I'm getting ready to go to a field area and I get, I'll download the offline maps, then I'll put the iPad into offline mode and I'll tool around the field area to make sure everything is saved correctly. I like to do that just to be sure. But I'm kind of paranoid.
Yeah, and another thing that you can do if you're going with a field team is that one person can actually download all of the tiles onto their device. And then just what Doug was showing in the iTunes on Mac or Windows, you can actually go and copy that, the offline tiles, and have the other people that you're going into the field with copy it onto their iPads. So if you want to make sure that all of you have the exact same offline maps.
The USGS, the Alaska Volcano Observatory, uses StraboSpot for their work, and they work that way. They'll set things up that way. Any other questions or any other demo stuff you want to see at this point?
I have a question, I guess, regarding maybe this will be covered later in the following days, but is there somewhere where there's a video or a workflow that kind of discusses how to set up team mapping, how you share that data between each other, and so on?
Not currently, but that's actually a really good idea, and we'll do a video about that soon for the YouTube channel.
Cool, that'd be great.
Doug, there's a question about from Paul Kelso about iOS versus Android versus desktop. Do you want to just say what's available now and what the vision is for the future?
And he's asking specifically about Strabo tools, but maybe speak generally about the different tools.
Okay, so at this point, Strabo Tools is iOS only. And it was basically when you do a development effort, if you do cross-platform work, we started that with Strabo using a program that allowed you to program for both Android and iOS. And so that's why the current version is available that way. What we found eventually, as I think I mentioned yesterday, is that over 90% of the users were using iOS. We also found that these other programs do cross-compatibility development don't really access a lot of the functions very well on the device. You do access camera, you do access GPS, et cetera, but you can't access those simultaneously. Whereas if you're programming natively for the device, you can do that. With Strabo Tools, the way it works is you have to capture the position, the device orientation, and the picture simultaneously. And basically that's asking a lot for a third-party set of software, but that's basically what Apple lets you do. So it's programmed in iOS. If we went to Android with that, we'd probably have to program in slightly different flavors of Android in a different language. So for Strabo Tools, it right now is available for iOS. If you look at Rick Allmendinger's programs, his mobile programs are iOS only, I believe, for things like Field Move, GMD, StereoNet Mobile. So in Strabo 2, it's going to be iOS only. So we're, again, because of restrictions in the amount of time and really the need to be able to get down to very specific hardware level, we're going to iOS only for a lot of these things. Jason, do you have anything you want to add with that from the development standpoint?
No, I think what you said is pretty spot on. Basically, like Doug said, we need to get down to some of the base hardware in some of these systems, and in order to do that, we have to develop natively. And since we're such a small group, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to develop two versions of the same code. So we've chosen to go to iOS only at this point.
So sorry to the Android users. I will say this though, Strabo 1 as an Android version is going to be around for a while. The Strabo 1 database and Strabo 2 database are fully compatible. So if I do a project in Strabo 1, I can download it into Strabo 2 and vice versa. So we will be maintaining that compatibility at least for the near future. Yeah, that's one important thing when we get to Strabo 2 and Nick's presenting that cool interface on Friday. You just bring your Strabo 1 project straight in. No muss, no fuss. Other questions? So we have the question that's come up, iPads or iPhones too? The plan on Strabo 2 is iPads. Basically, the minimum size will be an iPad mini and above. Again, when we developed Strabo 1, we had the phone size in mind, and that really limits what you can do with the user interface. With Strabo 2, we've been able to expand that vastly simply because you have enough screen real estate to do a whole lot of stuff. I generally use an iPad mini, and that's a good size. I've used larger iPads, and they're nicer when testing out Strabo 2. Does anybody else, Nick, do you have any experience you want to relate on that?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the decisions, you know, about what platform, what devices to support, it comes down to what's the most common user case given our limited kind of programming resources. So the most common use case is to have an iPad because of the map functionality with Strabo. Most of our users liked to have a device that you could look at the map at a near paper scale. And so, but one thing that we should mention is that this is an open source project. So looking ahead in the kind of decadal scale, anyone can program applications that feed into the Strabo backend. So that's going to be something where if there's a lot of demand for tools that are different from the front-facing, the device tools that we develop, there's opportunities for people to develop tools for other devices too.
And not to get ultra geeky on this, but Jason, jump in if you want. All of the code for the iOS devices is online. It's at GitHub. You can download it. You can do anything you want with it. It is written in JavaScript. So I suppose if you wanted to port it over to Android, you could go in. It's written in a language called React Native, which will support Android. You could go over and then tweak all the parts of it that would need to be tweaked to have it function well that way. We just don't have the manpower to do that. Is that accurate, Jason?
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing to remember too is that our backend, our database is built on an API that's publicly accessible. And so anyone could write software to access and take advantage of that API. In fact, Rick Allmendinger has used our API in 2 or 3 of his softwares so far, and he's had great success doing that. So.
I'll put in a shameless plug right now. We had a student, a GIS specialist a couple of years ago, put together plugins for ArcGIS and QGIS, which are online. Those use the API, talk directly to Arc, so you could actually sit there, talk directly to StraboSpot. You could sit there in your Arc project and communicate directly. Those are online, those are in GitHub. They need to be updated. If anybody here is doing GIS programming and development, contact us. All the logic has been worked out. It's just the mechanics of ArcMap and QGIS and updating for those systems. Yeah, for those, a lot of the heavy lifting has been done, but woman's name is Emily Bunsey. She now is a GIS specialist for the Illinois State Geological Survey.
I think at this point, maybe we can kind of keep this under an hour. Encourage people to use the Google Docs form if they have any other questions. We keep checking that. And then just kind of call at the end. Does that sound okay, Doug?
That sounds great.
Okay. I do encourage you to do a project, though, even if it's a very small one, just because to watch it is one thing, but then to actually do it is another. And I think you'll see some of the power that it does have if you can utilize it. So if we're going to do that, then we will meet on the same Zoom link. tomorrow at the same time, so 1 p.m. Central. And we will talk then, and just shoot us questions on the Google Docs if you have them.
Thanks, everybody.